All right, we are doing 1.2 solving inequalities, and it's very similar to solving equations. However, we're also going to add in number lines and interval notation for inequalities. So I'm going to color code all the different steps. First part is the solve is in green. And so first thing you do, just like equations, look to make sure that you can simplify on either side of the equation. Like everything's, each side is simplified as far as it can go. And that's true here. The next step, is to move the variables. And you want to move them first, and you want to move them left. Now, it's not a rule, it's just sort of a guideline, but you really do want your variables on the left-hand side because it'll help with the graphing. And it'll also help you identify, if you move them first, it'll help you identify whether there's no solution or infinitely many solutions. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. I have 4x minus 3x is x minus 10 is greater than or equal to negative 4. Trying to get x by itself, so I'm going to add 10 to both sides. And I have x is greater than or equal to 6. Okay, so this is my inequality. It's a solved inequality. The next thing I'm going to do is to graph it. I'm going to do my graphing in teal. And I'm going to start with a number line. I'll do it up here. And you put your values on there. I usually use 0 as a reference point and 6. I also like to mark that this is positive infinity and this is negative infinity. And as long as your variable's on the left-hand side, your inequality will point in the direction the arrow is going to go. So I know it's going to go from 6 out to the right to positive infinity. But I also know that if I have an equal sign under here, that means it's a closed circle. Okay. So I'm going to do a little cheat sheet down here. If we have greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, that means that it's going to be a closed circle. If it was less than or greater than like that with no inequality, then you would have an open circle on the number for graphing. Okay. The next thing we're going to do, we graph and we set it on a number line. Okay, next thing we're going to do is interval notation. And you always, I'm going to put this as a special note, start with the lowest value, or from left to right. And so this is interval notation. And if I start from left to right, first value I have is a 6. The next value I have is it pointing out to positive infinity, so that would be positive infinity. And whether you use brackets or parentheses is the same concept as whether you have a closed or an open circle. So this is a closed circle, so we're going to have a bracket. Closed circles should always have brackets. Open circles or infinities always get parentheses. So an open circle is going to get a parentheses. Okay? The bracket means that the number is included. The parentheses means that the number is not included. And this is all you need to know about, whether it's open, closed, and bracket and parentheses for graphing purposes and interval notation. Okay, let's do another one. Again, look, everything on this side simplifies as far as it can go. I cannot combine any like terms here or here. So now I'm going to move the variable first. I'm going to add 3x to both sides. You have negative 3x plus 7 is greater than negative 11. Subtract 7 from both sides. And I get negative 3x is greater than negative 18. I'm going to divide by a negative number. And this is where we stop, and we remember that if you multiply or divide by a negative number, so multiply or divide by a negative number, say it with me, we're going to flip the sign. Flip the sign. Okay, so since I'm divided by a negative number, this sign is going to go from that to that. So if x is less than 6, this is my inequality. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do with my inequality is I'm going to graph it on a number line. So I'm going to draw my number line. And my points, I've got 6. And I use 0 as a reference point. This time it's pointing to the left of 6. Remember, this is negative infinity and this is positive infinity. So negative 6 to the left. And there's no line under it, so I'm going to leave it as an open circle. Okay, so that's my final graph. My interval notation, remember you start with the lowest value, so you're always going from left to right, just like you read. It's pointing at negative infinity, and it goes all the way up to 6. Infinities always get parentheses. This 6 gets a parentheses because it's an open circle, and only because it's an open circle. Okay. We're going to try one more. There we go. Okay, remember you got to simplify on each side before you go any further. So I'm going to take this negative 3 and distribute it through the parentheses. So we have 5 minus 3x. Negative 3 times negative 2 is a positive 6. This is less than or equal to negative 3x plus 5. I can still simplify on this side of the parentheses, so I'm going to combine like terms. 5 and 6 is 11, so I have 11 minus 3x is less than or equal to negative 3x plus 5. Okay, once you're simplified on both sides, I want you to move variables to the left. So to move this to the left, I'm going to add 3x to both sides. I have 11 is less than or equal to, because these drop out, these are going to drop out, it's less than or equal to 5. Whenever you get rid of variables, your answers are either going to be no solution or all real numbers or infinitely many solutions. And it depends on whether it's true or false. Since this is false, that means we have no solution. Because 11, and by false, I mean 11 is not less than or equal to 5. Okay, if I had 5 is less than or equal to 11, that's true. So that would be all real numbers or infinitely many solutions if that's how your teacher records it. And that's all for part 1 of 1.2.